served faithfully for some 53 years. It's pretty impressive when you stop and think about it. Over 50 years, faithful service to our God. What a fine example. Lois was originally contacted by Jehovah's Witnesses, as we're known for in the door-to-door work, in Fairbanks, Alaska. She was later contacted the same manner in Winslow, Arizona by a brother of the Hopi Indian descent. And one of the things that Lois remembers about that meeting at the door is this brother was very nicely dressed, well-groomed. It left an impression upon her. Well, later a Bible study is started with her, and she started to learn about Jehovah's purposes for man in the earth. And it made sense to her because she loved creation, just like we do. Everything that Jehovah did, whether it was in the starry heavens or down here with the animals, everything that Jehovah did, he was beyond a creator to her. He was like this great artist. And she was so happy to learn that mankind and the earth were made for each other. It was very dear to her heart. So after she starts this study, a year later, her and her husband are back in Detroit, Michigan in 1960. And it is here where she becomes baptized. So think about this. We remember Lois as being bold and determined, right? But at 28 years old, she was discreet too. Why do we say that? Here she is all by herself. Her husband doesn't share her faith. Her parents don't share her faith. But she wants to get baptized. She knows this is the truth. So what does she do? She's got 2 infant girls. She drops the girls off at mom's place, doesn't tell her where she's going, and she borrows her mother's brand new Cadillac to go to the convention. And off she goes. And she pulls up, and she's rushing to get in to hear the talk given by Brother Noor. And she hands the keys off to a brother she's never met before. Now remember, this is 1960 in Detroit. The brother she hands the keys off happens to be African American, right? Didn't bother her. Why? Because through her study, she understood about the true Christian love and unity in Jehovah's organization. Her mother's brand new Cadillac, here's the keys, I'm going in to get baptized. She comes out, and then you notice after our talk here, she was surprised, she was shocked. There's this little placard that said, baptismal car. Well, what's this all about? Well, see, the baptism was going to happen at a different location, and her mother's brand new Cadillac was going to be the lead car in the procession. So off she goes, she gets baptized, and of course she has to run home, and she picks up her girls, and she drops her mother's car off, and thus begins the journey, her journey, walking with Jehovah. And many, many stories she can tell you. The various conventions. Again, we invite you to stay afterwards, look at the pictures. People from all around knew dear Sister McCally, formed true friendships with that woman. But now, some 53 years later, her friends, her family here are gathered together, sad, and that she died, but we're celebrating her life. Why is that? Take a look at a very interesting scripture with me, if you would. It's found in Ecclesiastes, and as a young man serving Jehovah, it took me several years to understand this. Ecclesiastes, the 7th chapter, verse 1. A good name is better than good oil, and the day of death is better than the day of birth. Now wait a minute. The day of death is better than the day of birth? How can that be so? If you have your footnote Bible there, in verse 7, a good name or a good reputation. So yes, it's sad when we lose a loved one, but when they die with a reputation, they've made a name of Jehovah. Why is that important? The Bible speaks about the memorial tombs. What's a memorial tomb? Jehovah's memory. Jehovah created us, and through his Son, he's going to resurrect all those, including Sister McCally, from the memorial tombs. Isn't that a beautiful thing? And so that's why we're here. We are comforted from the Bible. We can also offer comfort to the friends and relatives who are here because of messages like this. So think about this. We touched on it earlier. Had you ever thought why someone leaves the religion of their parents that they grew up with? Why they leave the religion of their spouse, knowing full well that they're going to face opposition, just as Lois did? Remember, she was a young woman when she made this decision. Well, why would you do that? You give up a lot of things. She knew it was the truth. When she studied the Bible, it had a ring of truth. It made sense. For some of us, wow, God has a name? I said that Our Father prayer how many thousand times? Nobody ever told me God had a name. Or that the earth is not going to be destroyed. Jesus said the meek would inherit the earth. Well, that makes sense to me. I love the earth. I love being here. It was made for me, I for it. The truth makes sense, and that appealed to Lois. So she built her faith in her God, and one of her qualities that we know about Lois, she could be stubborn. But her stubbornness came in handy, because when she was faced with these various trials, opposition, etc., she was loyal to Jehovah. She was steadfast. She never quit serving her God. That's a fine lesson for us too, isn't it? She expressed her faith in the ransom sacrifice of Jesus by being active in the Christian ministry. Again, you think about how long have you been dedicated to Jehovah? 53 years. She pioneered for somewhere around 20 years. That's pretty impressive. And she was rewarded in part by being invited to the Pioneer School 2 times. What a privilege, because of her faithful service all those years. We also know dear Sister Lois McCally as an avid reader. In fact, her whole family's that way. They all love to read. She loved the truth, and when you spoke to her, she loved to talk about the truth, didn't she? She could go on and on. But here's another good lesson. It wasn't just reading material. It was reading about Jehovah and his promises. What effect did that have on her? It strengthened her. So that, you know, when she was battling cancer these last few years, and her caregivers would come in, what was she doing? She wasn't thinking about herself. She was witnessing to those caregivers, letting them know about the truth, about Jehovah's purpose for mankind, that this is not what Jehovah had intended. You think, you parents, you grandparents, you think about your children and your grandchildren. Do you give them evil gifts? Or do you let them do harmful things like play out in the road? No. A loving parent doesn't do that. Who's the greatest loving parent in the universe? Jehovah. This wasn't his intent. This wasn't his purpose. And so she mentioned those things. She witnessed to people about that. And it's interesting, the last time I got to see Lois, it was, I believe, a week to the day before she died. And I walked in, and this, of course, Lois's smile, golden smile, right? And she says, well, look who's here. And I had this right here. First thing she says, look who's here with Bible in hand. Come on in, sit down. And for the next hour, there was an interchange of encouragement, like the Apostle Paul wrote. It wasn't me just encouraging her. It was her encouraging me. What a beautiful thing. It wasn't, woe is me, I've got cancer, please take care of me. She loved life. She didn't worry about that. Now, it's kind of interesting. The Bible Bible, Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians. It says that the last enemy, death, will be done away with. She says, you know, Brother Scott, I was reading recently, reminded me that death is an enemy. Jehovah hates death. Therefore, I've decided I've got to fight cancer with everything I've got because I don't want to give in to something that Jehovah hates. What a beautiful attitude, huh? She got it. She understood it. She also mentioned that she, Jehovah willing, that she could live to see the Great Tribulation or Armageddon. And again, it was not selfish reasons. She wanted to see Jehovah's name sanctified and his universal sovereignty vindicated, that all the opposers of Jehovah, just no more of this garbage and the selfishness and the evil of this world. All that by Jehovah's kingdom. But then she says, well now, you know, Brother Scott, if I can't make it to the Great Tribulation in Armageddon, I'm praying that I can make it to October of 2014. You know why? The 100-year anniversary of Jesus Christ being installed as king. She knew that. She looked forward to it. All of these things, these again are good reminders for us to think spiritually because it sharpens our faith, helps us to make it through the tough times. Well, certainly Lois appreciated Jehovah's purpose for the earth, as we mentioned. You know, we know the story. Become fruitful, become many, fill the earth, have in subjection. We're to be caretakers of the earth. And, you know, think about it. If sin hadn't interrupted Jehovah's purpose, would we still call this planet Earth? Maybe we'd call it Eden, or Planet Eden, because that's what it was. The Garden of Eden would be spread throughout the entire planet. Please open to Isaiah 11. These are some of the promises that, and as we read this, I know you will think of dear Sister Lois. And if we kind of skim down beginning there, Isaiah 11 verse 6 talks about the wolf and the lamb residing together. We don't see that today, do we? The goat and the leopard, the calf and the lion, all doing this. Look at the end of verse 6. A mere little boy will lead them. A child playing, and if you look in verse 8, child playing in the lair of a cobra and a poisonous snake. Well, how can that happen? Verse 9, they will not cause any harm or any ruin in all my holy mountain. Why? Because the earth will certainly be filled with the knowledge of Jehovah as the waters cover the sea. It's a promise from Jehovah. Go back to Revelation chapter 21. Beginning there in verse 4. And he, speaking about Jehovah God, will wipe out every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be any more. The former things have passed away. How sure can we be of that? Verse 5. And the one seated on the throne said, look, I am making all things new. Also he says, write, for these words are faithful and true. There's no reason for us to doubt the promises of Jehovah God that he'll bring by means of his kingdom. So we ask the question, why do people, good people, such as Lois, obviously she wasn't a criminal, we think about all the evil people in this world, they seem to overcome all sorts of things. But why do good people die? Well, the Bible has an answer for that. Romans 5:12, many of us are familiar with it, where it says that just as through one man, Adam, sin entered into the world, and as a consequence of that Adamic sin, what happened? Death. Death spread to us all. Simply put, that's why we die. Because Adam disobeyed his God. Heavy, heavy price to pay for disobedience. But Jehovah warned